financial vehicles can really handle a lot of that. And it also allows the public to get involved. Like master limited partnerships really came into the market in 1994. And between 1994 and 2010, 10 times, they've grown by tenfold. The number of master limited partnerships have grown tenfold at a compound rate, annual rate of 31%. But the amount of capital in the MLPs have grown 100-fold. So personally, I think if we could use master limited partnerships and you could grow the amount of money going into solar 100-fold, it would make a huge impact. Plus, solar assets, if you buy a solar farm, it's very difficult to sort of sell it because you've already taken the tax credits out and the 1603. So the price you pay for the amount of capital that it costs to get that cash flow is very low. With an MLP, it's publicly traded, so you have liquidity, which is very important. There's nothing like that right now. And also things like, same thing with REITs. They have assets, they're apartment buildings. Well, you can have assets that are solar farms. Same difference. There's just a little IRS tweak on one of them. And there's probably another small change on the other, but these are not big changes. Just a matter of getting it through the bureaucracy to move it along. Anybody have any questions related to those items or those vehicles? You're not making it easy, are you?
Hey, Peter, I just want to go back to this last issue that you brought up about the value of net metering and who's getting the greater benefit. And two data points I think that are out there. One is that I think it was San Diego Gas and Electric just lost a case before the California Public Utilities Commission where they were making the argument that the solar host was getting this windfall at the expense of all the other ratepayers. The CPUC, as I understand it, found out it was just the opposite. And we actually have some data that Dr. Richard Perez has done. I think he's left the room, but he looked specifically at New York State and found out that net metered systems deliver somewhere between 15 and 45 cents worth of value per kilowatt hour, depending on where they're located in the state. In other words, areas where the grid is most constrained, that's where the PV provides the greatest value. So maybe we can provide that link to the attendees, but I think that there's some real, well-supported research that calls it to brings some understanding to the value of net metering.
Right, I agree, and I think, like in California, I think there's 5 pricing periods, and if you're generating electricity at 2 in the afternoon, you should get 30 cents instead of 10 cents. I mean, and that's less than what it costs them to start up the gas generators. So, I think the utilities are kind of not telling the whole story on that. But, time-of-day pricing is really important. That needs to be implemented. Very important. And, the other thing I can't stress enough is this education thing. And I've told this story before, but since none of you are participating, I'll tell it again. In the early 90s, Japan launched a nationwide PR program. And admittedly, the Japanese are more uniform in culture, so they kind of can work together better than we can. But, they went from virtually no PV to PV everywhere. And they were there ahead of the Germans. And I had made a comment in one of the prior conferences here that I had gotten a phone call from a Japanese company that wanted to raise money for their PV company. And I asked them, well, what kind of PV do you have? Thin film, crystalline, what kind? And they said decorative. So I thought it was dual junction, because it was Japanese. And I said, what is decorative? He said, well, people who don't have PV on their house here lose face.
Oh.
Talk about a marketing program that's a screaming success. So they put fake ones on, so they don't get disgraced at the cocktail parties. And when Japanese people get disgraced, bad things can happen to them. So anyhow, that's what we need here. We need a program that makes solar cool. It can be done, but it's never been attempted.
It seems like if you
Oh
want
my
real
God.
impact, it's gonna be coming from the utility scale solar. I mean, one 30 megawatts from tri-state's more than all the residential solar combined, and that's just one co-op. I mean, it seems like it's been pretty quick with the utility scale solar, and maybe it's not, perhaps it's not out of the question to think that it should be the utility providing electricity, not the consumer, and it seems like from a financial perspective, it makes a lot more sense. I guess I don't know where my question is here, but I'm just sort of hearing a very sort of residential perspective of it should be the people buying the solar power, should always be the people, but I'm surprised the focus isn't right now on getting the utilities involved and just having utilities provide the large scale deployments.
Peter? Here's a response to that.
Okay, go ahead, Randall.
Well, the utilities, quite reasonably, continue to have to escalate their delivery charges because they're dealing with an aging and failing physical plant. So to the extent that DG, distributed generation, solar DG, puts the generation on the load, and as Professor Perez has explained to us quite elegantly, it puts the solar on the load at exactly the time when the failing distribution system needs the help the most. I would say it would be wonderful if both the co-ops and the investor-owned utilities would commit to do more than tinkering at the margins as they are now doing. But the comprehensive solution is to have as much distributed solar generation as possible so that we're getting past the congestion that we hear about. We're getting past the aging and failing distribution system, and we're delivering the electricity where we need it. And then in that case, net metering, as has ably been pointed out, is not revenue erosion for the utilities. It's actually helping the utilities fulfill their mission. So there's a place for everything, but it's not that central station power generation should replace DG or step in line in front of DG. We should be moving forward at both fronts at the same time. And I could go on about that, but I wanted to keep.
How about decoupling, utility decoupling, so that they only get paid for something other than just electrons?
And Peter, you and many people in the room know that at the public utility commissions, that's been an agenda now to a greater or lesser extent since PURPA in 1978, and it's just not been fully fulfilled in a lot of jurisdictions. So we need to keep working at that. We need to eradicate the old utility mindset that says any revenue erosion is bad for the company. We need to help them get past that.
No, I agree. Any other comments?
Well, just to comment on that statement, utilities are incredibly actively involved in solar. And if anybody thinks that they're sitting by the sidelines, every single non-regulated utility division is probably one of my competitors. Con Ed, Constellation, Exelon, Duke, PSEG, everybody is involved. And they're all building and building actively. So,
Laura, they're mostly buying, and a trifling amount of purchase in relation to their load. Duke, I actually am originally from North Carolina. Duke has fulfilled the tiny RPS requirement by buying wind farms and solar out of state. So we could go on and on.
right, but if you look at FPL, dominates the wind industry in America.
Many
and
of
they
those,
will for solar as well.
Yeah, many of those choices are dictated by fulfilling RPS requirements.
But not when they're doing it out of state.
But which in and of themselves are trifling compared to the overall loads. I don't deny that they're players, but they're falling far short. But this gentleman was proposing that they ought to have the pivotal role or the central role, and then the answer is that solar DG does more for the utility operations and the consumers and the environment than central station power generation. So I don't differ with you at all. It's just I wasn't saying it ain't happening. I was saying there's not enough of it in any category, so let's do them all.
Well, utilities are definitely the natural owners of distributed generation assets in the long term.
Well, we'll see whether they really want to do it beyond a token participation in an RPS standard or some
Well, the other benefit that they get from the distributed generation asset is that they get to touch the customer. And if they're offering them solar, they're also offering them energy efficiency services and 10 other products that they have in their toolbox.
Right now, to give an example, Con Ed just announced that they're investing in 30 megawatts out of state. So compare that to the multi-gigawatt load opportunity we have to satisfy in the state of New York. That's case closed.
Not case closed. Do you have when you're talking about a deregulated environment, in a deregulated environment, it's an entirely different market than the one you're talking about. So Con Ed, the regulated, does not and cannot own generation in the state.
Charlie, I know you're the ombudsman. I'm simply saying that given the size of the opportunity, then the participation of Central States